We now can reconvene our session at 1:02 p.m. Minister, I invite you as Minister for Corrections to introduce the officials accompanying you and to make an opening statement regarding the Department of Corrections.
Thank you and good afternoon, Committee, and thanks for the opportunity to make a brief opening statement in relation to corrections. Firstly, I'd like to introduce everyone at the table. Matthew Varley, the CEO and Commissioner, Tracy Luke, the Acting Commissioner of Adult Operations, Alicia Brimson, down the end of Strategy and Performance, and Sasha Dennis on my left, Acting Commissioner for Youth Justice, and Stephen Tacker on the finance of Chief Financial Officer. And also there's further Deputy and Assistant Commissioners available as required as we move through and help answer any questions you may have. I welcome the opportunity today to speak as my capacity as the Minister for Corrections to outline the work that has been undertaken over the last 10 months and the priorities that lie ahead. Corrections is the front line of community safety. It's tough work, it's critical, often unseen, but it's absolutely vital. When we came to office last year, we inherited a neglected and underfunded corrections system that was busting at the seams. We found that infrastructure was unable to meet demand. There was lapsing funding across operational areas, particularly in staffing, healthcare, industries and programs. There was a broken governance model with youth justice in one agency and adult corrections in another. These were not minor issues. They posed serious threats to community safety, operational integrity and the safety of staff, prisoners and offenders. They failed to keep frontline staff who come to work every day and help our community safe. Following the 24 election, significant structural reforms were undertaken, resulting in the establishment of a standalone Department of Corrections. This brought together adult correction services from the former Department of Attorney Generals and Justice and youth justice from territory families and communities. The integration has enabled a sharper focus on community safety, rehabilitation and better alignment with government policies relating to justice, crime reduction and regional service delivery. The department is now operating as a dedicated agency overseeing adult custodial operations, youth detention, community corrections and rehabilitation programs across the territory. This change, while structural, is also strategic. It has allowed us to better respond to the expectations of Territorians who want action on crime and a system that is firm but fair. The government moved quickly to implement major legislative reforms on bail, youth justice and sentencing. As a result, we've seen a 25% rise in the adult prison population, a sharp increase in community service offenders and growing complexity of offender needs. Yet through it all, corrections has delivered. Since August, the adult prison population has increased from 2,254 to 2,799 prisoners as of the 3rd of June. Youth detention numbers have also grown from 33 to 54 young people. Community corrections caseload has increased 23%, with 1,459 adults under supervision. As of Monday the 9th of June, there was 740 EM wearers in the Northern Territory. Community corrections, 482 young offenders, 39 at work camps, 119 to 640 for all corrections. Add police 100 equals to 740 of those wearers. The Corrections Infrastructure Master Plan was developed and released in October as a direct response to government reforms. These reforms were necessary, but they required swift and strategic planning to ensure the correctional infrastructure could meet demand. The Infrastructure Master Plan is a dynamic and data-driven framework designed to address current and future demands within the correctional system. Grounded in detailed modelling, it considers projected prisoner numbers, ensuring that the infrastructure meets both immediate and long-term needs. The plan is not static, it undergoes continuous review so that we can meet operational needs. This approach ensures that moving forward, our correctional facilities are prepared to handle increased demand while maintaining the necessary operational requirements under the Correctional Services Act 2014. We've allocated $117.4 million to infrastructure upgrades and expansions to 2028. Approximately $30.8 million of that has been spent so far. To date, the master plan has delivered 506 beds in 10 months, which includes the commissioning of the 410-bed facility at the Berrimah Correctional Centre, bringing online the 96-bed modular accommodation block in Alice Springs. We have now had a total operational bed capacity of 2,846 across adult correctional facilities. Planning continues for additional growth, with a proposed 200-bed women's prison and a 400-bed men's prison and a work camp in Katherine. Recruitment is a key priority for the Department of Corrections as we work to ensure we have the right people in place to meet growing demands of the correctional facilities and deliver the services the communities expect. Our ability to deliver on critical responsibilities, such as maintaining security, supporting rehabilitation, and ensuring community safety depends on well-trained, dedicated workforce that is equipped to carry out the important tasks they are hired to do. It's not just about filling vacancies, it's about ensuring that every individual we bring on board is capable of performing the job and who are passionate about the work they do. Between July 2024 and March 25, the department recruited 141 new correction officers and an additional 61 are expected to commence before the end of the financial year. This brings the total new commitments to 24-25 to over 200 correctional officers. We've also entered into contract with G4S with 20 personnel already deployed as special correction officers to support transport and court services. Our current correctional officer attrition rate is 8.1%, an improvement from the 8.3% of the previous year. This reflects a modest but positive trend in workforce ability. During the same period, community corrections recruited 37 probation and parole officers. Youth Justice recruited 35 officers across Darwin and Alice Springs Youth Detention Centre during the period of 1 July to 30 March 2025. We're also planning up to 4 bulk recruitment activities in the coming 12 months, with 1 currently underway. In March 2025, 25 youth support officers were employed and completed an induction and training program prior to commencing operations of the Alice Springs Paperbark Boot Camp facility and bail support facility. We've secured $126 million in new funding in the 25-26 budget. The funding will address rising operational and staffing costs, enhancing our capabilities and increasing the operational strength to meet the demand of growing prisoner and defender numbers across our adult and youth operations. $60 million will address lapsing funding the department was facing while addressing rising prison numbers through additional staffing and operational capacity. $20 million will support increased prison number assessing healthcare units. $40 million in contingency and reserve for our workforce growth, custodial and communal corrections, and contract management. This can be drawn down as required as we grow. $6 million in expanding electronic monitoring as our prison numbers increase. A further $4.2 million in domestic, family and sexual violence prevention and reduction programs in prison. Educational and vocational training reform is an essential rehabilitation tool that underpins meaningful engagement, resulting in increased safety for the community and the prison network. Despite the challenges corrections face, they continue to deliver education and vocational programs across the Northern Territory, increasing training numbers beyond that was achieved in the previous financial year. From July 1, 2024 to 31 March 25, 772 prisoners enrolled in an educational training program. That's compared to 632 prisoner enrolments in 23-24. Over 1,100 prisoners are engaged in internal or external employment, and community work support crews have delivered over $1.4 million in value to the community in volunteer hours. Prison employment programs, industries, inclusive of community services work programs, will provide value to the community by reducing the cost of prison operations and the provision of essential prison services. These pathways facilitate rehabilitation of prisoners by creating avenues to develop life skills in real training environments, and they enable the reintegration through community preparation by providing access to external employment opportunities and community volunteering. To increase prisoner engagement and deliver outcomes across priority initiatives, sentence to a skill and sentence to a job, the Department of Corrections will be launching a refreshed industry, skills and employment 3-year strategy later this year. The target employment rehabilitation pathway will provide focused supports for eligible prisoners both in Darwin and Alice Springs that will drive prisoners into a safety net of services that link them back to meaningful employment opportunities and community engagement. The model is designed to enhance linkages between employment and education, grow opportunities and partnerships, and embedded evaluation frameworks to ensure that we continue to grow opportunities that align with the needs of the Northern Territory. Delivery of offender rehabilitation programs was impacted by a sharp rise in prison numbers while we focused on community safety. As we move forward, we will ramp up delivery of these programs. Offender rehabilitation programs are delivered at Darwin Correctional Centre and Alice Springs Correctional Centre. Plans are in progress to deliver rehabilitation programs in the Berrima Correctional Centre. These programs include the RAGE program, the Sex Offender Treatment Program, Violent Offender programs, individual treatment programs, Safe, Sober, Strong programs, addictive behaviours and family violence programs in custody.
Through the chair, not free.
The department has...
Sorry, Minister. Member for Gouger, I note your interjection. I'll let the Minister continue and I'll allow another interjection in 5 minutes.
I didn't hear what your interjection was.
That you're going on, it's not a very brief statement.
Oh, do you want me to keep... I've got it.
Member for Gouger, Minister, please continue. Member for Gouger, feel free to interject at 1:20.
I'll continue for the member for Gouger so we can understand what's going on in the prison industry. I know he already knows because he was a previous minister. He knows how much of a disaster it was when he was the minister. The department has designed and commenced the rollout of a new general offending program, not a domestic and family violence program in the community in response to mandatory sentencing reforms. There are 3 new programs approved to commence via grant on 1 July 2025. Direct grant agreements with respective Aboriginal community control organisations are underway and targeted for execution by 30 June 2025. They include the DFSV Aboriginal Art Therapy Project, DFSV Aboriginal Culture Stressor Program, the DFSV Aboriginal Social and Environmental Wellbeing Program. We're responding to the rise in domestic and family violence with new intervention models and partnerships. We've stood up a dedicated NDIS assessment team to support offenders with disability needs. In 24-25, we invested $2.6 million in external providers to deliver programs and activities in the Alice Springs, Don Dale, and the Holt Youth Detention Centre. $1.35 million funded a core team to coordinate these programs and activities and focus on initiatives that support young people through the leave of absence to engage in work, skill development, vocational training, and back-to-school programs. A further $2.8 million employed a specialist workforce within detention facilities to provide group delivery, positive behaviour support plans, treatment plans, counselling and therapeutic intervention, forensic risk assessment and statutory reports. We spent $4.21 million to ensure young people with a statutory requirement subject to supervision of a community youth justice officer pursuant to the Youth Justice Act 2005, Sentencing Act 1995 and the Bail Act 1982. We monitored and assisted to be compliant with their court orders. We invested $4.81 million in youth justice programs to reduce crime and divert young people away from the formal criminal justice outcomes. We expanded bail support facilities and implemented the sentence order program as part of the youth boot camp and bail support model. Across the youth justice service system, the focus on rehabilitation will continue to be a priority. It is through the rehabilitation we can identify and address the underlying causes of criminal conduct by changing an offender's personality, attributes, habits and skills to stop them from reoffending. Rehabilitation at the Holt's Youth Detention Centre includes the Step Up program. The program is targeted at young people aged between 10 and 17 or 11 and 17, focused on reducing violent or aggressive behaviours, supporting families and fostering healthier relationships at home. These programs often include work group, case management and family support. Further initiatives are also include developing the implementing a Friend Office Centre initiative, Job Club and Service Expos to provide detainees with pathways to employment when reintegrating into the community. This is underpinned by the Departments of Education and Training providing education to detainees 5 days a week for 45 weeks of the year. The Timmendale School focuses on providing core literacy and numeracy, as well as programs that meet students' individual interests and needs, including academic, physical, artistic, cultural and social, emotional wellbeing. Detainees will continue to engage in the Northern Territory Certificate of Education and Training Skills Development through partnerships with third parties such as Palmerston Youth Skills Centre, Life Saving NT, Drive Safe NT, Darwin Wildlife Sanctuary, YouthWorks, Indigenous Marathon Foundation, NT Athletics, Army Indigenous Development Program, Hoops for Health and CONTAF. $4 million will be invested in the Aboriginal community-controlled and non-government organisations across the Northern Territory to deliver youth diversion programs that have a mandatory task for young people to complete, holding them accountable and addressing criminalic behaviours. These programs are community-led interventions aimed at reducing youth involvement in the justice system. $3 million will provide for youth boot camps, structured and supervised community-based interventions, also designed to address criminalic behaviours and equip young people with skills to support rehabilitation and reintegration. Reintegration, service coordination and ongoing support are all critical to an offender returning to the community and reduces the likelihood of reoffending. The Department of Corrections has continued to deliver core services and major reform under significant pressure and scrutiny. From record prisoner growth and infrastructure delivery to workforce expansion, legislative reform and innovation, this has been a period of rapid and responsive system transformation. We acknowledge the challenges that lie ahead, but the steps taken this year, supported by strategic investment and policy alignment, place the Department in a stronger position to meet the Territory's needs in the years to come. I would like to acknowledge the staff of the Department of Corrections for their commitment, professionalism and resilience during this period, and not only the staff here today, but all the staff right across the Northern Territory who do a great job, who do the work behind the scenes. So without them, it would be very difficult to operate, and it would be certainly very difficult for the people up here to do their job. So thank you, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Minister. Are there any questions on the Minister's statement or
Yes.
position?
Thank you, Mr Chair. Minister, in your opening statement, you spoke about programs and staff. So are you able to detail what skills programs you have expanded on since coming to government?
Since coming to government, the skills programs that we offer and expanded on in the prison is a list, and I'll run through it so you get them all. Construction White Card, CDU, Construction White Card Other, First Aid, Forklift, Retail 1, Certificate 1 in Retail, Certificate 2 in Skills and Vocational Pathways, Quick Smart, UNE, Literacy for Life, Higher Education, Visual Arts 1, 2, 3 BITE, Tractor Operational Courses, Back on Track, Drink Driver DASA, Chainsaw Operations, Chemical Applications, Outdoor Power Equipment Servicing, Operate Small Plant and Equipment, Barista Training, Certificate 1 in General Education, Certificate 2 in Sport and Recreation, Certificate 2 in Music, Food Handling Skill Sets, Infectious Disease Control, Workplace Skills for the Health Sector, Basic Culinary Skills, Certificate 2 in Visual Arts, Certificate 4 in Visual Arts, VTP Set Up and Perform Music, Test and Tag, Welding Skill Sets Introductory, Certificate 2 Construction Skill Sets, Certificate 3 Civil Machinery, Gateway to Independence, Learner Driver Theory and Training, Pre-Training Assessment, Financial Education, First Aid Certificate, Kitchen Skills. I've just got some more. I think they're the main ones. They're in the adult space. Do you want the,
Sure.
do you want the youth
that's
one as
fine
well?
for now.
Do you want
And
the
how
youth-
much funding is allocated towards that?
The funding for those is an operational funding that is just normal funding that we use within the budget. If you want exact detail, I can pass across, but the funding is what we spend our $495 million a year on to make sure those programs, as I said in my opening statement, we prioritise rehabilitation, and it's a core business, and we spend a lot of time and effort making sure that we rehabilitate as many prisoners as we possibly can.
Sure. So just through the chair, the previous government arranged the MOU with 𝙍𝙬𝙬𝙍𝙬𝙍, so that's not an additional or new program, which was about retail, hospitality, trade, industry, healthcare, white cards, the arts. So what programs in particular have been added since September last year, in addition to that $1.7 million MOU that was arranged with 𝙍𝙬𝙬𝙍𝙬𝙍?
Okay, so for Gorgia, the additional ones are barista training, Certificate 1 in General Education, Certificate 2 Sport and Recreation, Certificate 2 in Music, Food Handling Skill Set, Infectious Disease Control, Workplace Skills for the Health Sector, Basic Culinary Skills, Certificate 2 Visual Arts, Certificate 4 Visual Arts, VTP Setup and Performance Music, Test and Tag, Welding Skill Set Introductory, Certificate 2 Construction Skill Sets, Certificate 3 Machinery, Civil Machinery, Gateway to Independence, Learner Driver and Theory Training, Pre-Training Assessment, Financial Education, First Aid Certificate and Kitchen Skills Training.
Great. And are you able to provide the number of completion within the correctional environment and a breakdown of gender participation in those programs?
I'll start with the completion for you. For the first one, construction white card, 108 completions.
Sorry, Minister, I'm just basically, do you have a completion rate overall?
Yeah, I do, but we've got completion for each of those programs, so I can run through each of those programs.
You can table it if you want, or take it on notice.
No, I can just read it out. So the first question is construction white card CDU, 108 completions. Construction white card other, 38 completions. First aid, 10 completions.
Minister, you're missing as well. I did ask you about gender, so you might want to do that while you're doing it.
I'll do that next.
Oh, all right. You're just going to add some more time, talk it out, eh?
I'm just reading.
Yep, okay. Go for gold.
I'm answering your question.
I'm going
I won't.
Okay.
Must be afraid of asking.
I'm going to step in here. How long will this list take, Minister?
It's the same list I read earlier. I've just got the completion, so I'm just going to go through that.
We might, if you're happy, we can table that document.
Well, I'm just happy to read it out onto the record.
The committee's happy for you to table it.
Member for 𝙍𝙬𝙬𝙍𝙬, please. This won't help anything. Minister, I'll hand over to you. It's your question to answer. If you are happy to table it, we can table it. Otherwise, you can read through.
Okay, to make, obviously you're scared about time. How would I just say there's 671 completions?
Right. And how many of those are women?
We'll have to take that question on notice.
Member for 𝙍𝙬𝙬𝙍𝙬, please restate the question for the record.
Minister, how many women have participated and completed programs with Northern Territory Correctional Services since September last year?
Minister, do you accept the question?
So just to clarify, we're talking about education or rehabilitation programs?
Both. So for education and rehabilitation.
Okay, thank you.
Minister, you happy to accept? The question asked by the member for 𝙍𝙬𝙬𝙍𝙬 of the Minister has been allocated the number 3.7. Member for 𝙍𝙬𝙬𝙍𝙬.
Thank you. Just wanting to follow through, how many... it's on. Yep, the microphone is on. Minister, how many lockdowns have occurred across Northern Territory correctional facilities and police watch houses and youth detention facilities in the most recent reporting period? Can you please provide facility by facility breakdown?
Just give me a minute and we'll get that information. Okay, so I've got some information here for you. What I might do is pass to the Commissioner. I don't want to spend hours reading through it because there's a lot of information there to give to you,
Minister.
in relation to lock time hours. So
Sure. Minister, if it is helpful, certainly want to be helpful. I'm happy to read. I've got further questions about lockdowns, which may then suggest that you might want to take the question on notice, given that I will be asking follow-on questions. Are you happy for that, Minister, or would you like to proceed?
Well, we've got information in relation to the adult side of it, and we've got information in relation to the youth side of it.
Yeah,
So the youth side of it is relatively straightforward because the Health Centre has been relatively new and the information is available. And in fact, I can give that to you right now. There's been 25 rotational lockdowns in the youth space. So that's the youth side of it. In the Health Youth Detention
And then
Centre.
Alice Springs.
And the Dondale in that reporting period.
Correct, and Alice Springs.
And Alice Springs.
Great.
So that's the youth side of
Yes.
it done. So now let's focus on the adult side of it. Do you want to run through that question, Commissioner?
Thank you, Minister. Matt Varley, Commissioner for Corrections. Thank you, Mr Paech, for your question. As we've sort of identified previously, lockdowns occur in a range of scenarios where prisoners are confined in a restricted sense to cells, blocks, wings, dormitories or entire facilities for various periods of time throughout the day during the waking hours. Now, those lockdowns are a common term used to provide operational management of the facility in a safety and security sense, depending on the circumstances of the day and also the availability of staff. And for that reason, we have aggregated data that talks about the average time out of cell, which we report annually to the Bureau of Statistics, but the specific detail of lockdowns by facility, by day, is more difficult. And I guess the point that I would make to the committee is that in a sense, I would expect there would be some version of lockdown in most facilities, most days.
Thank you. So, Minister, can you outline again how many lockdowns there have been in Northern Territory Correctional Services since September last year? Can you outline the categories or classifications your department has used to define the lockdown events? Can you also determine whether they are overcrowding? Can you also, for each lockdown reported, provide the corresponding reason for the lockdown, broken down by facility, duration and classification? And has there been any increase in lockdowns attributed to staffing shortages or overcrowding in correctional facilities or watch houses over the last 12 months? If so, how many and in which facilities?
Thanks for the question, Member for 𝙍𝙬𝙍𝙎. I'll pass to the Commissioner to give you some context, and then we'll work out after that if we need to take it on notice. We'll see.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Member for 𝙍𝙬𝙍𝙎. The answer to your question, as best I can answer it, is that there are lockdowns across all of the facilities all of the time, and they have been substantial in the last number of months because of the rate of prisoner growth and the stretch that we have experienced. Being quite plain about that and open. It is difficult for me to answer the question with specific data because the lockdowns can occur in a range of scenarios, from a cell or block or wing being locked down to entire facilities. It is relatively rare for a lockdown of an entire facility to occur because of the nature of staff shortages. What is more likely to occur is that the entire facility is locked down for short periods of time, depending on operational events, such as, for example, a count of the total census of the population is incorrect, and so the prison stops. But more likely that various parts of the prison, various wings and cells are locked down, or in fact what we call rolling unlocks, which is staged locks and unlocks throughout the day. So that's the best way I can answer that question without giving you data that would be inaccurate.
Thank you. Minister, again, I would like the information. Correctional Services would keep data in case there is events that require legal action around the number of lockdowns, the duration and the reason. And I would like to understand over the last 12 months
Yeah. Could you give us an idea when you say, can you define more lockdown? Because as the Commissioner just said, we're talking about locking down the whole prison, locking down a wing.
Well, that's the data that I'm after. How many lockdowns have occurred since September and the reason for the lockdowns, whether it is a lockdown for a medical incident, whether it is a lockdown because of staff shortage, whether it is a lockdown because of an inmate dispute, or whether it is a lockdown for another nature. That's the information that we're after. Correctional Services would keep a log of all of that.
I'm just being advised that they don't have that level of lockdown material, so that's not available. What we can give you is what we've given you, but what you just went through then, which is a very exhaustive list, I'm advised isn't available, and we don't have that information exactly in that what you're asking for.
So, Minister, you're confirming that Northern Territory Correctional Services does not record the reason for the lockdown, the duration for the lockdown, and the date of the lockdown.
I'm not confirming that at all. I'm just saying your question is very detailed, and we can give you information about how many lockdowns there are, but it's very hard to get the information, and it won't be accurate because there's so many different reasons and lockdowns. You know, the term of lockdown in the general community.
I'm happy to provide some further clarity. Minister, can you please confirm how many lockdowns have occurred over Northern Territory Correctional Services facilities since September last year that relate to overcrowding, that relate to prohibiting legal representation being able to be facilitated with inmates, and that have caused programs and education to not be delivered?
Okay, we can. That I'm getting advice that we can get that information, which is different from what you asked for, so we can take that on note. We can give you the legal visits now, but you want it all in one, so it's in one.
Put it all in one. That's fine.
Okay.
Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙬𝙎, please restate the question for the record.
Right, I can't remember what I asked. Minister, could you please confirm the number of lockdowns that have occurred across Northern Territory Correctional Services facilities since September last year that have resulted in legal representation not being able to occur, medical lockdowns, overcrowding lockdowns, and staff shortage lockdowns?
Okay, no, we'll take that on notice.
Minister, do you accept the question? The question asked by the member for 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙬𝙎 of the Minister has been allocated the number 3.8. Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙬𝙎.
Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙬𝙎, can I just add that we do have the information for the youth justice, so we could answer that now.
Yep, sure.
That would be it. I'd pass to Sasha for that.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you for your question, Minister for 𝙍𝙀𝙬𝙎. Member, sorry.
It's all good.
That jelly haircut.
From the period that you asked, we don't have from September, but from the 1st of July 2024 to the 31st of March at Dondale, prior to moving to Holtz, inclusive of Holtz and also the Alice Springs Youth Detention Centre, we've had 0 lockdowns due to overcrowding or for medical appointments. We've had 25 rotational lockdowns. They are due to operational requirements such as low staffing or high levels of escorts, including court, medical and leave of absences, so requiring transport of young people outside of the facility.
Okay, thank you. Sure.
Are you able to give a length of time of those lockdowns?
Thank you for asking the question, Member for Johnston. We aren't able to be specific. We do have periods of the day which align to our structured day program for young people, so we could provide you with a portion of the day, but in terms of specific hours and minutes, we would be unable to do that.
Minister, you talked about programs. I'm just wanting to understand, are you able to provide us with the number of inmates who are currently participating in a behavioural change program and the breakdown of their gender?
Okay, like I said in my opening statement, there's 1,100, but we'll give you, that's for overall, but I'll pass to the Commissioner who will be able to, I think, give you that information.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙬𝙬𝙬. As Minister has explained in his opening remarks, we have a series of rehabilitation programs that are categorised into different elements. As we have previously said, we have our high-intensity offence-specific treatment programs, which are clinical rehabilitations. We also have our psychoeducational programs. In the last 9 months to the reporting period, we've had a heavy focus on the delivery of domestic family violence programs off the back of the landmark coronial that occurred last year. So we have had 4 6-month RAGE programs delivered with 41 offenders graduating, 12 family violence programs for remand prisoners, that is new, and we've had 103 offenders graduate from that. 17 family violence programs for sentenced prisoners that have 157 graduates. And we've had 21 family violence programs delivered in the community with 179 graduates. And I should say also there are a series of other rates in relation to other programs, if you're happy for me to provide those.
Yeah, and are you able to provide, are these programs delivered internally or by an external?
No, these are our internal programs delivered by our staff, including the clinicians and our offender rehabilitation and engagement staff. So we have had, for example, excuse me, as I said, the RAGE program, which is the intensive treatment program. We've also had the RAGE program delivered intensively but with individuals, and that's done for reasons of clinical assessment and better dynamics attached to an individual participating in that program delivery as opposed to a group setting. There's been 14 individuals participate in that program. 9 remain in progress. We've also had psychoeducational programs delivered. There's 27 prisoners have started the Safe, Sober, Strong program with 26 completing. 34 prisoners also undertook the addictive behaviours program with 31 completing. And also the general offending program, which has in the past year been commenced delivery in the community. I guess that's in relation to sentencing reforms. And we've had that delivered in 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙑𝘼𝙔 with, I think, 2 programs, 7 and 6 respectively. In Forward in Darwin, we had 8 and 12 commence that program in 2 different tranches. King's Narrative delivered another program in Alice Springs in 2 tranches, 6 and 5. And in Vendale, we had in Catherine, I should say, we had 1 program delivered through Vendale with 7 participants still in progress. So we've focused heavily this year on the domestic and family violence space because of the nature of the work we've seen occurring in our facilities.
Sure.
Can I just interrupt one thing? Member for Johnson, you asked about the average time, or the time. The average time is 90 minutes for those lockdowns.
Right. So just on this, when we're talking about the domestic and family violence programs, Minister, probably a question potentially for the Commissioner. Who is doing the evaluation piece to determine whether or not these programs are best suited for the need? And when are they being evaluated? How are they being evaluated? And also, what is the rate of recidivism as a result of these programs?
Okay, well, I'll pass to the Commissioner to answer that.
Oh, you're going to do that.
Thank you, Minister. We have 3 program evaluations underway over the last 6 months. All 3 of those evaluations are due to be completed at the end of this month, and I'm waiting to see the outcomes of those evaluations.
And is that external or internal?
They are external, Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙑𝘼𝙔𝙬. So the 2 programs that I suspect you're probably most interested in is the family violence program and then the RAGE program. We obviously targeted those as our principals. Those programs have been reviewed, or are under review, I should say, by external group called Allen and Clark, who have been undertaking an outcomes evaluation of those programs. I don't want to preempt the findings.
Sure.
But we expect to be able to use those findings to identify whether the program needs refinement. Those programs, as you know, have been in place for some years. We also have a program evaluation underway in relation to the Elders Visiting program, which sounds a bit odd, but the work that our Elders Visiting program and our elders do in the prison system is substantial, and I'm pleased to say that this year is the anniversary of 20 years of the Elders Visiting Program, so we felt that that was a great opportunity for us to review the program and look at how it could be improved to provide service delivery for prisoners. That program is being reviewed externally by a local company called Thrive Territory, and we expect those recommendations and advice again by the end of the month.
Sure. And the Visiting Elders program is operating across all Northern Territory Correctional Service facilities?
Yes, it is.
I think you've got something to add on the DV, is that right?
I do. Is that, yeah, thank you. Through the chair.
Please.
Thank you. You just mentioned the family violence program, Commissioner. I understand that was run, as you just said, out in remote communities, and it's currently ceased. Is that right?
I'll pass to
through the Minister.
Through the Minister. Apologies. Yeah.
Thank you for the question, Ms Davis. The answer to your question is yes, we are reducing that program and ceasing it because our focus is on moving those resources and assets into the custodial space, and that has been a plan for probably a year now. And the men's behavioural change programs that are run and administered by the Department of Children's and Families are the endorsed community-based program for DV. Our focus will be on providing the expanded resources in the custody setting.
And so those men's behaviour programs only run in Alice, Darwin, Catherine and Wadden, no other remote communities, so there's no plans for any family violence programs in remote communities, is that correct?
Well, ultimately, we're talking about corrections. So
within the corrections portfolio?
No, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, okay.
And are you able to confirm the RAGE program, is that being offered to remandees? And what's the completion rate or participation rate of remandees?
I'm sorry, Mr Paek, I made a mistake there nodding. The RAGE program, no, is not offered to remandees. The family violence psychoeducational program is now.
RAGE is only sentenced offenders.
That's correct, and that's tied to the clinical nature of the treatment that occurs in that program. That is a, shall we say, a cognitive therapy type program.
So does that program align with the department within the agency within Territory Families, the domestic and family violence framework?
We're exempt. I think I understand the question you're asking.
Yeah, go for it.
The programs in custody are exempt from the standards that were specified for the mandatory. Sorry, I'll start again. The programs in custody that we deliver are not subject to the men's behaviour change program standards that were issued by the Department of Territory Families I think about a year ago. Those standards apply to men's behaviour change programs in the community. Mm-hmm. Our RAGE program is based on, well, it's been in place for some years, which is why we're evaluating it, but it is based on a series of other clinical principles that underpin how we approach therapeutic treatment in custody. Okay. It also requires participants to engage in those that 6 months worth of intensive treatment, including acknowledgement of their offending behaviour, which is why it's only available to sentenced prisoners.
Yeah. And can I ask, you spoke about bail. Is the Northern Territory Correctional Services bail support accommodation facilities in Alice Springs and Darwin, with the machinery of government changes, that still sits with Correctional Services?
Yes, it does.
Yes. Are those services still managed by the Salvation Army, or are they now managed internally?
So we were talking about the paper bark facility, which is not...
No, we're talking about bail support accommodation, which is managed by the Salvation Army. Well, I'm asking, is it still managed by them, and what's the capacity?
I'll just pass to the Commissioner.
Thank you, Minister. Yes, Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙑, that program, which we're very proud of, is still run in partnership with the Salvation Army. It's doing great. We have those two locations operating in Darwin and Alice Springs. I can provide you some statistics in relation to that program. And it's been in operation now for, I think, I'm going to say 2 and a bit years.
You'd be correct.
as you would recall. However, what we are looking at is how we improve and expand that program. And I'm also pleased to say and advise the committee that we intend to continue that program and extend it. We're in consultations with the Salvation Army about how to do that.
Extend in the same locations, or are we looking at Tennant Creek and Katherine? Or Palmerston?
Yeah,
The short answer to that question is I'd like to look at all of the above. Our priority at the moment is in Darwin and Alice Springs, and in fact we're in consultation with the Salvation Army at the moment about expanding the program in Alice Springs to include women, which the current program does not, as you would know from the hostelry in Alice Springs. We have previously looked at the Katherine region, and we weren't able to find an appropriate premises in Katherine. That's not to say that we won't ever be able to do that again, but at this time our focus is on the consultations we're having with the Salvos, who do a great job, by the way, for the expansion of the facility in Alice Springs to help us support women.
Sure. So, Minister, you also mentioned in your opening statement around a work camp for Katherine. Where is that expenditure featured in the budget to allow that infrastructure and the staffing?
Basically, I'll pass to the Commissioner. We're trying to establish a work camp in Katherine. We're looking at 2 sites, whether the CDU or the research farm, and we're working on getting that up and running now. So your question is, where's the funding for it?
Well, yeah, I think the question is framed at you're looking at an existing infrastructure site, so it's not a greenfield site, but also there's costs associated with staffing that.
So far it's funded internally, and once we find the location and do some estimates of the costs, we're going to come back to budget review and ask for some more money, which is sitting there contingency ready to go. So we've got a plan to move forward, but what we've done is we just want to find the location, get the plan right, because our view is that we're going to get one crack at setting it up, and we want to make sure that it's based on, so like Barclay, you've obviously been to the Barclay work camp, where CDU, for example, if it ends up there's some cattle work, there's some work we can integrate our to a skill job programs into those open rated or low prisoners can go and have those life skills so they're getting ready to reintegrate into the community at the end of their sentence.
So, Minister, just to confirm, it's going to be a low classification facility, and obviously I know you don't have a site identified yet, but what kind of capacity number are we talking about?
Yeah, so it is going to be the low to open rated, and we're looking at 200.
200. Okay, thank you.
So I messed up. We're looking at 200 people. That wasn't.
Pardon? 200 people. Okay, yeah. Are you able to confirm how many correctional officers are currently in the system?
Yes, we can. I'll pass to the Commissioner to give you that detail.
Thank you, Minister. Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙑, do you mean how many correctional officers we currently have employed?
Yes. Yep.
So in relation to, well, I can give you data from the most recent payroll, which is pay 25 on the 4th of June, and at that time I had, 738 correctional officers employed in the Territory.
Great. And how many of those are on extended sick leave, Minister?
I would have to check the numbers, Mr. Paech. The answer to that would be not a substantial amount.
Okay.
Is that
for you to take it on notice?
Do you want exact? I was going to say we can give you the exact number. We can take that on notice.
Member
please.
for 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙑, please restate the question for the record.
Minister, can you confirm how many correctional services staff are on extended sick leave?
Minister, do you accept the question?
Yes, how long is extended? Can you give us a breakdown, like 1 week, 1 year, 1 month?
Beyond 3 months.
Beyond 3 months. Yeah, we accept that.
The question asked by the member for 𝙍𝙀𝙇 of the Minister has been allocated the number 3.9. Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙇.
Thank you. Minister, what is the average staff to prisoner ratio in each correctional facility, and how does this compare to best practice standards?
Yeah, we can tell you the number of staff per facility, and we'll see how that goes with answering your question, because it is a bit of a complex question, because there's no set best practice ratio. It's negotiated with the union, but we can tell you how many staff at each facility.
Sure, but I'm assuming there's a best practice standard agreement in the EBA with the correctional services staff. So how does that compare?
We'll start by giving you the numbers, and then we can work out whether you need more information from there.
Thank you, Minister. Thanks, Mr. Paek. Bear with me, my eyes aren't as good as they used to be. At the Darwin Correctional Centre, as at that last pay period I referenced before, the 4th of June, I have 446 employed correctional officers. At the Alice Springs Correctional Centre, I had 207. At the Berrima Correctional Centre, I had 55, although that number fluctuates and changes because those staff are provided on roster from Holtz. At the Barclay Work Camp, I had 12 correctional officers. At the Datchler Work Camp, I had 8. And then in relation to the question around prisoner ratios, is that so? The prisoner ratio is determined. Well, there isn't a algorithm as such. The ratio of prisoners to staff to prisoners, I should say, features in the operating models for both major facilities, Darwin and Alice Springs. That specifies a certain number of posts per block, per function, per day. And then those operating models are adjusted based on the available staff per day. So if the number of staff falls below the specified number of posts, then managers in the facility take remedial action according to that operating model to adjust the operations of the facility.
So what is the number, Minister, of the operating model per facility compared to the staffing ratio?
Just
Thanks, Minister. Thank you, Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙑𝘍. The answer to the question is the number of posts per day, and I think from memory, and I'm referencing my brain here, it costs us about 145, I think, posts for the Darwin Correctional Centre. I think the number in Alice Springs, off the top of my head, is around 80-odd posts a day. That fluctuates according to the number of prisoners in the facility. Depending on how many prisoners we have, we can adjust that ratio up and down, of course. In Alice Springs, for example, we ratchet that ratio up. If there's extra prisoners in the facility, we have a ratio of 1 to 10 per shift.
Commissioner, would it be helpful if I say, as of a particular date, what was the ratio in comparison to the operating model versus the staff? Because I understand the answer you're giving me is fluctuating, because it's always going to fluctuate because the prisoner numbers are going to fluctuate. Is that help? I'm happy to take it on notice.
I think if you want a particular day, that would have to go back to the data. Just take some advice.
Yeah.
Well, I can answer the question if you'd like, as an example for today, if that helps you.
Look, in terms of the reporting period, are you able to give me the numbers as of the 31st of March, which is the reporting period? What was the number of staff versus the operating model of that day?
Yes, we can take that on notice.
Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙑, please restate the question for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, could you please confirm, as of the 31st or on the 31st of March, could you please confirm the number of staff on duty versus the operating model numbers of the day?
Would you like to give a time?
Just, I think the day.
The day is fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. We accept the question.
Thank you. The question asked by the member for 𝙍𝙀𝙑 of the Minister has been allocated the number 3.10. Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙑.
Minister, how many correctional services officers have been assaulted in this reporting period, and what was the nature of those assaults?
Could be out on the opening statement. We've got to flick through the folder a bit, so you've got to bear with us because we're sort of. I know we're not on the anything yet, but we're just on the opening statement.
No, that's
so,
fine.
Or we can move to outputs if you
I
want.
do have it. I've just got to remember it. Which fault? There's many briefs.
Okay, so for the reporting period from 1 August to 30 March, there were 26 reports. So 9 of those being hit or kicked, 5 body stress, 2 falling from same level, 4 spitting, 2 scratched, 2 other or unallocated, 1 hot water, 1 hitting object with part of the body.
Thank you. And Minister, how many G4S contractors are currently working in Northern Territory Correctional System?
That's 5.1.2.
20.
20. And is that as of today?
Yes, yes, it is.
Thank you. And how much is the G4S contracting costing Territorians?
I'll pass to the Commissioner. Can you give us a particular day you want that?
As of today?
Why?
As of today, how much has it costed since it commenced?
Just got to go flick.
Yep, that's fine. You're running away on me.
June cost will be.
Okay, so for the reporting period, the cost is $234,157.59. For the financial year, we estimate the cost is estimated to be 1.581.
Great.
So basically one and a half million.
Okay. So, Minister, are you able to table the G4S details, including what the cost per head or total value of that contract is?
We're happy to take questions, and if we can't answer the question, we'll take it on notice.
Okay.
So you're talking about cost per head?
Yeah.
That's the G4S rate.
Yeah. So the cost per head is so 665.8 and 84. So $665.
$665.
Yep.
Okay.
That's a daily rate.
Yeah. And what does it cost to normally, without G4S, house a Territorian in a correctional service?
So
Yes. What's the daily cost of a person incarcerated in
350.
350? Thank you. And Minister, have you or any of your staff declared any actual perceived or potential conflicts of interest in relation to G4S or any related correctional service procurement decisions?
Any potential conflicts of interest are dealt with as per the legislative requirements. So again, if there is a perceived conflict of interest, it is dealt with in relation to normal legislative requirements.
So I'm just asking, are you aware of any actual perceived or possible potential conflict of interest with G4S as of now?
No, I'm not.
No, thank you. And you said that G4S officers have been contracted to undertake custodial operations at the Darwin local court and manage medical escorts. Can
They're
you
not managed yet. No, just escorts.
just escorts?
Yeah.
Yep. Can you confirm that these are the only tasks being formed by G4 officers at the moment?
Yes.
That's a yes?
Yes.
And how many additional G4S contractors do you intend to employ?
Well, I'll let the Commissioner explain because
Sure.
a G4S contract is an on-call contract essentially. So if we need more numbers, we can, and we want to move from, at the moment, we want to encourage G4S to have local employment. So the next level, and I'll let the Commissioner explain a bit more about it,
Yep.
but it's about local content and local employment.
Sure.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙑𝘼𝙔𝙍𝙎𝙏. The 20 initial FTE for the court service and the Metropolitan Darwin Transfer Service was the start. That was appointed under a 6-month term, and it's one of a number of service types that are available to us under the head contract that we established with G4S. Those service types are court cell and custody management, which I've just referenced, prisoner transportation and escorts, hospital bed sits, and watch house support. To date, we've only really drawn down on the court cell custody management at the Darwin Local Court Service and prisoner transportation in Darwin on a metropolitan basis, Monday to Friday. We anticipate, and we are in consultations with G4S at the present on being able to establish a local workforce to scale that up over the coming few months. Those consultations and negotiations are still underway. The final number of staff that we would need to work through those services is still being modelled. And then, of course, we would work with G4S to advertise locally and for them to run some training programs. But we expect, I should say, that program to expand over the next few months.
Right. And I just wanted to confirm, Minister, when we talked about assaults, was that including, have there been assaults on any G4S officers?
Minister, I'll get the
Sure.
Commissioner to relay that.
To the best of my knowledge, Mr. Paek, and I'm just checking this, is I think we've had one incident at the Darwin Local Court. Sorry. We've had one incident occurring where a member has sustained a minor whiplash industry injury, and that person has returned to work. That was in relation to the restraint of a prisoner.
Okay. And are you aware of any G4S staff terminating their employment with G4S who were supposed to be in a correctional service? No?
No, I'm not personally aware, and I'll just take some advice. We don't know.
That's fine. You often talked about, Minister, that one of the reasons for the G4S contract was to reduce the overtime bill. Have you seen a reduction in the overtime bill, and what is the current overtime bill?
So there's two questions there. G4S is more about an operational surge control. So we knew and we could see forecast prison numbers going up. And so we needed to recruit, and we've been recruiting through a rolling recruitment, and I think we recruited over 200 prison officers now. But the G4S contract was about surge control, and we're dealing with that by this contract. So that's the answer to your first question. What was the second question again?
What's the current overtime bill?
For the whole of the corrections?
Yes.
I'll pass that over to...
Thank you, Minister. I have the answer to the question on the overtime bill for custodial operations, if that's the one you're after. So this financial year to the reporting period, the custodial operations overtime bill has been 266,000 hours at $19.23 million. And that is an average of, I think, at this time, 355 hours per prisoner, essentially, which is a ratio we look to measure our operations. That hasn't changed materially, and I expect by the time we get to 30 June, we'll probably end up with an overtime bill similar to what we did last year.
Right. And just to confirm, are there G4S officers at all being used when Correctional Services has jurisdiction over watch house cells?
No.
No. And how many watch house cells are currently declared for the purposes of Northern Territory Correctional Services?
We watch house cells, with the Darwin Watch House is declared, and I'm not sure how many cells are in it. There's 2 wings to it, so do you want the exact number? Like, can anyone... Yes, I'll pass it over to the CEO to answer that.
Thank you, Minister. I think there's two parts to your answer, Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙑. One is we don't have any staff presently in watch houses. So we're not operating watch house cells. We understand, though, watch houses, as in the major ones, are declared and gazetted as correctional facilities under the Act, and in particular the ones where we have operated, which is Palmerston and Darwin City, and then Alice Springs are declared, the whole site is declared as a gazetted custodial facility.
And do you currently, Minister, have any Territorians in watch house cells who should be being held in a correctional service as of today?
The answer is yes, we do. But it's essentially the watch houses, we don't have any operational staff in the watch houses, but yes, we do. So we've got a total in Palmerston today, 51, Katherine 10, and Alice Springs 9.
Thank you. And just a question in relation to the G4S. Minister, how do you respond to the concerns from correctional staff and their unions that the increased use of private contractors is a wider step for privatisation? Can you guarantee the unions and custodial services officers that you're not moving to privatise the correctional service system?
100% guarantee.
Thank you. I think the member for Johnson's
Member
waving.
for Johnson.
Thank you. So I've got some follow-up questions and some additional questions. And I've also got some questions for the member for Mulka, so if people can bear with me. Thank you all for appearing. Just a couple of follow-up questions first of all. I just wanted to ask, just in relation to that very last question about prisoners held in watch houses, which I think you said there was a total of about 70 when I add that up. What's the length of time that prisoners are being currently held in watch houses, the average and the longest?
Okay, well, as of today, days in watch house in Palmerston, there's 8 prisoners who've been there for 1 day, 4 prisoners who've been there for 2 days, 3 prisoners who've been there for 3 days, 3 prisoners who've been there for 4 days, 9 prisoners who've been there for 5 days, 3 prisoners who've been there for 6 days, 1 prisoner who's been there for 7 days, 8 prisoners who've been there for 8 days, 5 prisoners who've been there for 9 days, 1 prisoner who's been there for 10 days, 3 prisoners who've been there for 11 days, 2 prisoners who've been there for 12 days, and 1 prisoner who's been there for 14 days. So for Katherine, 1 prisoner has been there for 1 day, 2 prisoners have been there for 2 days, 1 prisoner has been there for 3 days, 2 prisoners has been there for 4 days, 1 prisoner has been there for 5 days, 2 prisoners have been there for 6 days, and 1 prisoner has been there for 7 days. For Alice Springs, 4 prisoners have been there for 1 day, 3 prisoners have been there for 5 days, and 2 prisoners have been there for 6 days.
Thank you. And to confirm, when prisoners are held in watch houses, that's under conditions where they have no access to outside space and they're under lights 24 hours a day. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Is there a reason that there's that extended length of time, 3 people for 11 days?
At the DCC, corrections advise that police how many beds are available each day, and then police determine which prisoners get transferred across. So the police and the corrections staff are working together, hands in hand, and then those prisoners are transferred to the from the Palmerston Watch House to the right prisoner. And there's a priority order. Number 1, urgent medical needs. 2, behavioural issues. Prisoners required by AVL. Sentenced prisoners, and then remand prisoners. That's for Palmerston. And effectively, the priority for Alice Springs is urgent medical needs, behavioural issues, sentenced prisoners, remand prisoners, and prisoners required by AVL.
So that's the priority list for when prisoners will be moved into watch houses?
Yes. No, from watch houses to corrections.
Removed from watch houses back to corrections.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what's their gender? Has it been men and women or men?
We don't have the exact breakdown for today, but we do have males and females, and perhaps what we can do as we go on, we might be able to get that information to you, and when we get it, we'll certainly give it to you. So we'll give you the information as of today, males and females, and we'll get that sent to us. So hopefully someone's out there listening.
Would you like that on notice?
Yes,
Member
please.
for 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙎? Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙇, please restate the question for the record.
Minister, can you please confirm the gender of individuals who have been held on remand in a watch house cell?
Yes.
Minister, do you accept the question?
Yes, it's for today. For today, yeah.
Yes.
The question asked by the member for 𝙍𝙀𝙑 of the minister has been allocated the number 3.11. Do you have a follow-up question, member for 𝙍𝙀𝙑?
Just in terms of the watch houses, Minister, you made comment in the media on the 12th and the 18th of March that watch house cells were no longer being used to house inmates or offenders. Can you confirm that there has been an ongoing presence in the Palmerston watch house?
I think my media statement is that we no longer have correctional officers in watch houses, so I'm not sure what media statement you're referring to exactly. But what I can say is that on that particular day, the correctional officers and the prisoners that were under their control were moved to a new facility, and then that watch house became an operational watch house, and then the police were using it as an operational watch house. So on that particular day, when the corrections moved, all the corrections officers and the corrections prisoners under their control were moved out, and then the police opened those watch houses as a functional watch house. And now what we've got a situation is where under the previous government, they were like numbers were through the roof, where we brought in our master plan of infrastructure and we've made these additional beds. So we're moving people out of those watch houses as quick as we can. And so we're working towards getting them to a correctional facility. And now the police are using those watch houses, other than the Darwin watch house, because that's not an operational watch house. I just want to stress that point. That's corrections watch house. But we talk about Palmerston and Alice Springs, those watch houses we're talking about. So prison guards and prison officers were out of those and they haven't been put back. So that might be the answer to your question.
So, Minister, through the chair, can you confirm how many inmates or offenders have been in watch houses since the 10th of March? Has there been at any time an absence of no one in there, or has there been continual presence of an offender waiting a bed in correctional services?
Well, the Commissioner can answer that.
Thank you, Minister. In relation to all operational watch houses, I expect there's never been a day where there hasn't been a prisoner in custody in those watch houses. There are days, and Alice Springs and Catherine come to mind, where we've been able to move all prisoners out, but of course it fills back up again. In Palmerston, I can say that on the day we exited, I think from memory we had about 80 prisoners in our custody back in March when we exited, and moved most of those to Holt's. The challenge has been the daily fluctuations of fresh custodies that come in, and we manage that very closely with police. Yeah. To answer the question specifically, I'd need to check the individual stats for each particular day.
Okay, well, I would like that, please.
No, it's not really. We've got it on a daily basis.
Okay. Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙇, please restate the question for the record.
Thank you. Minister, could you please provide the data around the number of inmates or offenders who should have been held in a correctional services facility but have not been able to, due to overcrowding, have remained in police watch house cells since the 10th of March?
Minister, do you accept the question?
Yes, we do.
The question asked by the member for 𝙍𝙀𝙑 of the minister has been allocated the number 3.12. Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙑, I do note member for Johnston does have more questions.
Sure. One more question. How many offenders in the Northern Territory Correctional Services are currently on remand?
We've got that figure.
I hope so. I should rephrase that. How many as of today? So it gives you an accurate reading.
1,421.
And what's the percentage reading of that, of the overall prison population?
50.
50% of the prison population is on remand. And what percentage of that are women?
Change the chart.
Pardon? Changing the chart. While you're there changing the chart, and what percentage of that are children? Of Sasha's, sorry.
Yeah, we'll do
Dennis
one question at a time. So we'll deal with the adults, and then
There's 100 and...
there's 203 women today in custody.
There are 55 young people in detention today.
On remand?
84% are on remand.
84% are on remand. And what percentage are women?
13% are female.
13% are females. And Minister, what was the percentage? So you've given me the numbers. 203 are women. Yes. And what percentage of those women are on remand? And then I'm going to hand over to the member for Johnson. Sorry.
Please bear with me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We'll just do a quick maths
Yeah,
calculation.
no worries. While the Corrections Minister's doing that, through the Chair.
We might take it on notice so we can give you, otherwise our
Perfect.
maths might be.
Thank you. Yeah.
Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙑𝙍, please restate the question for the record.
Minister, could you please provide the number of, do you just need it for the women or, yeah, okay. Could you please provide the number of women currently in Northern Territory Correctional Services today that are on sentenced, that are remanded, and that was it, wasn't it? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we accept the question.
Yeah, great, thanks.
The question asked by the member for 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀 of the Minister has been allocated the number 3.13. Member for Johnston.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, what was that number again you just gave us?
What was... Minister, that was number 3.13. Member for Johnston.
Why I've asked that, we should be able to get information and we'll be able to...
Just to clarify, Minister, you said in Parliament, and it was in Hansard from 18th of March, that corrections will no longer staff or use operational watch houses in Palmerston and Alice Springs. So that was the source of that.
Yeah, well, corrections don't. The police man the watch houses, corrections officers do the prisons.
So the prisoners in the watch houses is not counted as corrections using it?
No, they're under the care of the police.
Okay. Just going to some of the staffing questions asked by the member for 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀. In relation to assaults, I think, was that only assaults on staff? Many assaults?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. How many assaults by staff on prisoners have been reported?
Reported to police.
How many have happened? How many assaults by staff on prisoners have been reported?
I'll let the Commissioner answer that.
The answer to that question, member for Johnston, is none to me, other than if there are any, they would have been reported to the Ombudsman or other integrity bodies, and they haven't been raised with me, to my knowledge, in this reporting period.
And on that, when the Ombudsman appeared here earlier, they said that their rate of complaints from prisoners was going down, and that was because prisoners were not able to make complaints because of ongoing lockdowns. Are you able to comment on that?
Yeah, yes, I can comment on that. The Ombudsman reported it was from 553 down to 430. But you've got to remember there's multiple factors. You know, while lockdowns and extended detention in police cells might have influenced the ability for those prisoners to communicate, it's also possible that improvements in the prison conditions and the resolution of those disputes within internally have also played a role in reducing those external complaints. Not to mention, there's also other avenues for the prisoners to lodge complaints. We've heard about the Ombudsman, but there's the telephone access they've got available to, written communications and in-person visits by the Ombudsman, as well as additional to that, there's a confidential access to complaints within the system themselves that the prison deal with, and they can do that securely and sensitively without fear of retribution. There's also the official visitor scheme, which offers another channel for prisoners to raise concerns. So despite the prison increase in numbers population has gone up, the complaint numbers have gone down, suggesting that there could be an improvement in the overall processes and conditions within the prison system.
Thank you, Minister. So you have no response to the Ombudsman's reflection. You're saying that actually it's because conditions have got better, not that, as the Ombudsman said, it's difficult for people to make complaints. Is that correct?
No,
I'll just sorry. I can't remember the exact what the Ombudsman said. Is that to the transcript?
The Ombudsman said that they I'm not going to remember the exact words. Someone else might be able to help me out here, but
I can look it up.
Yeah. That's
I just
okay.
want to make sure we're reflecting correctly what the Ombudsman said.
I remember them saying the gist of it was the reason that they had gone down was because people couldn't access the complaint system.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure if we're quoting the Ombudsman, we are doing it
obviously
correctly.
we're not quoting him exactly because the gist of it is not quoting, but what I'm getting at is that's the Ombudsman's view, and I fully respect his view, but what I'm saying is there are alternative hypotheses in relation to why those numbers have gone down. For example, one, conditions have improved. Two, there is a confidential complaint system within the prison system that is working, that could be working better, and also the official visitors scheme is up and operational working. So there are other avenues for prisoners, not to mention the prison numbers have gone up and yet gone down. So there's a range of reasons why the Ombudsman made that observation, and he's entitled to do that. But what I'm saying in response is there's other mechanisms for people to deal with complaints.
Thank you.
I will say the Ombudsman will just refer to the office. It is a female office holder at the moment, Member for Johnston.
Thank you. In relation to official visitors, how many official visitors appointed under Section 26 of the Corrections or Section 212 of the Correctional Services Act are there currently?
You just got to bear with us. We are bouncing around between outputs here. So.
Thank
It
you.
was a broad opening statement.
I'm happy to do it, but just be aware of the time. If you're worried about time, it takes us to get.
I'll step in here. Minister, if there's a question that you believe should be in an output, you can advise the committee and we can deal with that in the output. But we are in the question of statement.
I'm happy to answer your questions, but what I'm just getting at is we're flicking back and forth is because we could be answering these in the format and the routine that we meant to be happening, but we are going back and forth.
We don't mind.
As long as you don't mind about time, that's fine. So your question is how many visits?
No, my question is how many official visitors?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's there.
And my follow-up question would be how many visits?
And then you're done. You haven't yet. You might have by now.
Okay. So the answer is there's one, but two have been recently appointed by myself, so there's three.
How long has there been one official visitor for?
For this financial year.
Yeah. There's been one official visitor for this financial year across every correctional facility in the Northern Territory.
Yes.
How many visitors have occurred throughout custodial facilities in this financial year?
So a number of official visitors, So in Darwin there's been 6, the Berrimah there's been 1, and there's been none in Alice Springs.
So to be clear, there's been 7 official visits by one official visitor in this financial year across the whole correctional facility?
That's correct.
Facilities? And just to check, is that one of the reasons you think prisoner complaints might have gone down, or there might be other avenues for prisoners to complain, as you said?
There's a whole range of prisoners, avenues for prisoners who want to complain, and official visits is just one of those.
I will just note, just for the committee, I've read this transcript of the Ombudsman. The Ombudsman doesn't give any clear reason. She acknowledges that there are prison pressures, that they still have access to the prison and are conducting education programs as to prisoner rights. But she does acknowledge that there are current prison pressures out of her control. I'll just clarify that for the committee. Member for Johnston.
Thank
Can
you.
I just clarify, for the question on notice of 3.13, females in custody today, 89% on remand, 140 of the 203 in total.
140.
140, yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Just a couple of follow-up questions about G4S. In relation to the contract, where are G4S staff being accommodated and for how long, and what is the accommodation and allowance cost to date?
Question?
Where are G4S staff being accommodated and for how long, and what is the accommodation cost and allowance cost to date?
I can pass that to the Correction Minister, Commissioner.
Thank you, Minister. The G4S accommodation is in, from what I understand, service departments in the Darwin area. The cost to date has been $85,892.
Does that include allowances?
No, that's the cost of the accommodation. I think the allowances is paid as part of their daily rate, from what I understand.
Okay, thank you. Some follow-up questions also on the questions in relation to domestic violence programs. I think I followed up on the family violence program. In relation to prisoners on remand being able to access programs, I think just was having a look at the domestic violence, the Action Plan 2, where it said that $1.9 million went to corrections in 24-25 to enable prisoners on remand and on sentences under 24 months to access DV programs. I think previously that was not the case because of funding limits. How many prisoners on remand have accessed a DV program in 24-25 as a result of this funding?
Okay, I'll pass over to the Commissioner, but just to say, as I've said previously, that when you're on remand, the educational programs are voluntary and you can assist it, but there's also, and I'll pass to the Commissioner to expand on that.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Member for Johnston. Bear with me, please, because I might have missed parts of your question. The ability for us to deliver the family violence program to prisoners on remand is a relatively new thing, which we're happy is progressing and is growing. We've delivered, I think I said earlier, 21 of those remand programs. Sorry, my apologies. 12 of those remand programs with 103 prisoners involved in those. And could you remind me of the other parts of your question?
That's specifically into domestic violence programs. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
So my question was how many prisoners on remand have accessed a DV program, and how many prisoners, I would also say, on a sentence under 2 years have accessed a program under that funding? That's kind of specifically what I'm interested in.
I understand. So the answer to, I think, the first question is how many prisoners have accessed the remand program is 103 in the reporting period till, I think, 31 March. We have reduced the eligibility criteria for our RAGE program from 2 years to 12 months. I'm just checking as to whether we have got data on how many people in that new eligibility criteria have gone through the program. I don't believe I do, I'm sorry. So I can take that question on notice in terms of how many people less than 2 years have accessed RAGE.
Have accessed any DV-related program?
Okay, I can take that question on notice for you.
Yeah. So,
Member for Johnston, could you please restate the question for the record?
how many prisoners on a sentence under 2 years have accessed a domestic violence-related program as a result of the Action Plan 2 funding?
Minister, do you accept the question?
Yes, we do.
The question asked by the member for Johnston of the Minister has been allocated the number 3.14. We will also break now for 5 minutes.
Can I just ask one at the end of that particular question?
Yes, if it's in the same line, go for it.
Yeah, it's just so just in relation to that, with funding that's allocated to a specific thing, if it's not spent on that, what happens to it? So for that 1.9 million, if that number of people accessed it and there's unspent money, does that continue to be committed to DV spending or?
Yes, thank you, Member for Johnson. So the answer to that question is yes. The money that is allocated under DV Action Plan 2 was spent or is being spent on the employment of the staff in our clinical area to deliver those programs. So that's why I need to check for you the breakdown of the offenders that have done that.
Right.
It is a complex thing, though, because it's not just about how many people we put through a system. It's about all of the other assessments, report writing, and the clinical work that's done with each particular offender. So that's why I want to take the question on notice for you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, time now is 2:34. We'll break for 5 minutes, reconvening at 2:39. Adjourn. Member for Johnson.
Member for Johnson, before you start, we've got some more information about the complaints. So we've done a bit of research in the break, and the numbers have been going down since 2019. So there's been a downward trend in relation to complaints. But I know the Commissioner's got some more information about complaints and how they're dealt with within the corrections, so might be able to alleviate some of your concerns.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Member for Johnson. I apologise. I should have provided a bit of clarifying information earlier, which would have helped add some context. So the Ombudsman's Office talks about the complaints that they'd received. They're but one part of the system that we operate. And in fact, earlier this week, I was out meeting with some of my senior managers at Holtz, and we were talking about the review of the complaints mechanisms in the prison that are the internal ones. So every prisoner has access to prisoner complaint forms that are in the blocks, and they can provide a complaint form to their respective block officers on a daily basis. Some of those complaints can be frivolous, as you can imagine. People complain about things in prison, from TVs to food. Others are more systemic issues, such as access to the right sort of services, and we deal with those. Then there's, of course, the confidential access complaint system, which is an opportunity that the prisoner can say, I wish to access the confidential system, and that provides them either an envelope that goes direct to the General Manager or direct to my office, and those envelopes are not opened by the staff, so that's a confidential way of raising an internal complaint issue. There are the Ombudsman mechanisms, as you've spoken about. There's also other mechanisms such as the Anti-Discrimination Commission, the Health Complaints Commission, ICAC, of course, although they're few and far between, I think. So there are a whole range of opportunities for prisoners to raise complaints, and we could tabulate data on the more serious end of the scale. The block officers and the daily complaint forms would be quite regular.
Member for Johnson.
Thank you. I have a lot of questions in relation to prison-based programs, but I think I might put them in as written questions, noting the time and that we still have a lot of outputs to get through. Just in relation to official visit, I also wanted to check in terms of youth detention, how many official visitors there are and how many visits happen.
Thank you. Well, so there's three official visitors, and at Holtz there's been 11. And at Alice Springs, there's been 10 visits.
In this financial year?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
One official visitor at Alice. There's only one official visitor.
And there's only one official visit in Alice, official visitor, who's done 10 visits.
Correct, as part of our reduction of
Yeah, which is, because remember, part of the master plan is that the youth are moving to the Holtz Detention Centre, so there's 3 official visitors up there. In the reporting period, have conducted 11 visits. Along with the other people who like the Ombudsman and people go there and visit those.
Thank you. So we'll dial just in relation to...
And also have the Elders Visiting Program as well. So if some of the prisoners have got concerns, they can get raised with them as well. So there's another avenue for people to deal with complaints, because as you can imagine, some Aboriginal people don't feel comfortable talking, but when the elders come in, the official visitors, and that is another avenue for people to make complaints about the prison system.
Thank you. And just while I'm on youth justice, a couple of questions from the member for Mooka. How many video link calls between Central Australian young people housed in Holtz Youth Detention Centre and their family have been facilitated since Alice Springs Youth Detention Centre was partially closed?
Can we take that question on notice so we can give you the right information?
Yeah. So through the chair, the question is, how many video link calls between Central Australian young people housed in Holtz Youth Detention Centre and their family have been facilitated by Department of Corrections staff since Alice Springs Youth Detention Centre was partially closed in January 25?
Minister, do you accept the question?
Yes, we do.
The question asked by the member for Johnston of the Minister has been allocated the number 3.15. Member for Johnston.
Thank you. And with the Holtz Youth Detention Centre, just to clarify...
Can we just clarify that question?
Yes.
Do you want how many visits have been initiated by family as well? So you're talking, Holtz going out. What about, you want us to provide how many applications or requests received from family members to have telecommunications or video links with detainees in the Holt Centre?
I think all data in relation to any video link calls.
So both ways?
Both ways, yeah. Thank you.
So can we modify that question?
Minister, if you're happy, I'll amend it. I'll amend question on notice 1.5 from and to. Data going from and to.
Just to clarify, we'll provide information of how many family members request visits.
Yeah. Okay. The question is amended. Member for Johnston.
What in relation to works at Holt's, are the works finished?
You're talking about the drainage works?
I'm talking about all works in order to be fully operational.
Okay. Okay, thanks for the question. So, construction of the new Holt's Detention Centre is complete, with the facility operating in November. Planning is undertaken to increase the capacity, which was achieved in January. Their youth detention centre has 4 of the 5 stages of stormwater drainage now complete. So there's a whole lot of drains internally that found in the wet season it flooded. So they have been looked at. A number of infrastructure issues have been identified since the opening of Holt's. Water quality, acoustics in all areas, stormwater, security locks and door handles were not fit for purpose. All the defined documents and plans to fix those have been enacted and awaiting materials to get the interstate. So due to the Holt's construction work going on, some of the parts of the detention centre haven't been operational because we can't have contractors in there with building materials whilst detainees. So there's been a lot of work, but all the work's been enacted and waiting on parts to come finish. So it hasn't finished yet, but all the work that needs to be done has started. Yeah. So such as door handles, door locks, and there's some acoustic problems in there as well, very noisy, so they're dealing with that as well. So all that work has started and we're waiting on parts to arrive. So hopefully that answers your question.
I guess it does. I mean, I'd be interested to hear what the impact is of the unfinished work. So I hear that the drainage has been finished. For example, as the education space, can that currently be accessed?
Yes, 2 weeks ago.
Great. Okay, thank you. Is there any kind of ongoing impact on young people in terms of the works that you're still waiting to complete?
No.
Okay, thank you. Also, just in relation to youth justice, the Northern Territory Children's Commissioner released a report, Our Most Vulnerable Children Bearing the Consequences of a Failed System, in October last year. I'm just wondering how that report might be informing practice direction and what changes might have been taken into account based on that report.
I might pass you to Sasha to talk about that.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you for your question, Member for Johnston. The report provided a number of government agencies information around how the service system needs to identify earlier young people who are identified as vulnerable and also in highly complex social settings and environments. For corrections with the youth justice system, there was a number of recommendations where earlier screening and assessment of young people once they come into the detention centre was raised. We have a comprehensive assessment and screening process for all young people when they enter the youth detention centre system through our specialist assessment and treatment services team. There are 5 qualified psychologists and a number of social workers who work within that team and complete a number of screeners and assessments. We use that information then with our Justice Liaison Officer to submit, where appropriate, NDIS applications for young people to come into the scheme. We also work very closely with a number of service providers to support young people through occupational therapy programs, supporting young people who have cognitive delays and so forth. And that's all through the assessment once they enter the youth detention centre or the youth justice system. A number of other recommendations, Member for Johnston, were directed to other agencies to do similar work. And for us, as part of the reducing crime strategy and addressing the root causes of crime, there's further work that the government's undertaking that includes the recommendations from the Children's Commissioner's report.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner. Just in relation to that, can you, or Minister, can you advise what's being done to provide opportunities for 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙬𝙎𝙎 assessment and diagnosis?
In the adult or the youth?
In the youth.
I'll part to Sasha to answer that.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Member for Johnston. On entry into the Youth Detention Centre, we complete a screener, and it covers institutional risks and needs, and also risk factors which allow us to identify early indicators of intellectual disability, medical history, and physical disability. If through that assessment process we identify indicators where they may be fetal alcohol syndrome elements or indicators, we will complete a request to private providers to complete that screener and assessment process. In Central Australia, we have a partnership agreement with Congress who do that through Child and Youth Assessment Treatment Services. The Department of Health are working here in the top end to model somewhat a similar agreement with an Aboriginal medical health service to do similar. But we go to an out service to be able to complete those assessments. We don't have the skilled professionals to undertake those assessments for FAS.
Thank you. And I note that that was a concern that people raised in terms of moving young people from Alice Springs to Darwin, that specialist service was not going to be available. So it'd be great to see it getting on board here if it does happen.
Can I add to that, please,
yes,
Minister?
certainly.
In response to that, Member for Johnston, once a young person has commenced their assessment with Congress, we actually transfer them back to continue that assessment process. So there is no interference with the young person being assessed while they are in our custody. We continue to do that work where when a young person is released, our community youth justice officers and our case management staff will often support that young person and family to continue their assessment so that it can be completed.
So just on that, following on that question, what is it costing to transport young people from Alice Springs to Darwin and back?
We'll just get that for you. Yeah, okay. So the answer is between January and 31 March, 33 detainees were transferred between Alice Springs Intake and Facility and the Holt Youth Justice Facility with 91 flights at a cost of $74,000.
$74,000. Okay, thank you. And across correctional services, watch houses and youth facilities, what has been the number or the usage of spit hoods over the last reporting period?
Youth Justice is zero.
Youth Justice is zero.
We'll just get that information for the adults. Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙎, we do have the information, but for in the essence of time, we will take it on notice.
Great.
But
Sure.
we're highly likely we'll be able to give the answer for 3:30.
Thank you.
Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙑, please restate the question for the record.
Thank you. Minister, could you please provide the number of the use of spit hoods in watch house cells for people who should be incarcerated or be in care of the correctional services and within the correctional services facility, noting that there are 0 for the reporting period in youth justice?
We take that on notice.
Thank you.
The question asked by the member for 𝙍𝙀𝙑 of the minister has been allocated the number 3.16. Are there any further questions on the statement?
Yes, sorry,
Member for
I haven't
Johnson.
quite finished. Just so with the 𝙍𝙬𝙇 question, I also have that question for adult prisoners. So in terms of, can the minister advise what's being done to provide opportunities for 𝙍𝙬𝙇 assessment and diagnosis for adult prisoners?
We'll just get that information for you.
Thank you.
Commissioner, you want to answer that?
Sorry. Thank you, Member for Johnston. Excuse me. The short answer to the question, and I don't have the data with me to tell you how many, but there are 2 broad ways that occurs. One is through our medical assessment services in the prison system. So everyone who comes into custody has a medical assessment and can be referred for further cognitive assessment should that be needed. And disability assessments and those sorts of things. And then the second part of that is as we work through a person's offender management plan with our psychologists as they're working through their treatment, that's another opportunity for it to be assessed as well.
And is there any money committed to support or work with people who are 𝙍𝙬𝙇 affected in NT Correctional Services?
Whilst we're finding that information, the answer to that question about the spit hoods, Alice Springs Correctional Centre is 1, the Alice Springs Watch House was 2, and the DCC, Darwin Correctional Centre, was 13. So that answers that question on notice.
Thank you, Minister. That was question 3.16. Member for Johnston.
Thank you, Minister. And Member for Johnson, thank you for the question because it gives me an opportunity to talk to you about something that we're very happy and excited about, which is the launch this year of our new National Disability Insurance Scheme Offender Services team. That's a mouthful, but we have a specialist team that has been established in February in our Offender Rehabilitation Engagement Group. It's something that we have taken from our learnings with our colleagues down in South Australia, and we're very grateful to South Australian Department of Correctional Services for supporting us on the design and establishment of this territory model. It's something that's brand new for us. So if you'll bear with me, we're very excited about it. So it gives me an opportunity to tell you this good news story. We've established a specialised team, including a principal disability advisor, a NDIS psychologist, someone who understands the NDIS system, an occupational therapist and a community transition coordinator, and we're currently under recruitment for 1 remaining occupational therapist position. The purpose of this team is to work with prisoners to identify their suitability and to support the applications to the NDIS for program assessment and packages. In South Australia, this has been a remarkable success where they have been able to, in the 2 or so years of their operation, assist 700 odd people across South Australia's prison system to access the NDIS, and has been a remarkable transition for support for them as they exit custody. We look to do the same, and to date we've identified, for example, just here in Darwin, there's been 47 referrals made to this new team to assess disabilities and eligibility for NDIS support. To date, we've worked on 27 out of those 47 referrals, and we've had a couple of early successes with 2 applications being accepted by NDIS for support packages, and another 2 I think are under consideration. We've also engaged with 44 prisoners who we believe are eligible to have a disability assessed. and we're working with them to gain consent to work on their cases. So the good news story is it's a work in progress. We know that many clients in corrections who are eligible for this kind of disability support suffer from a cognitive disability. And that's certainly been the lessons we're seeing from our colleagues in South Australia, and that's why we've set up the program here.
Thank you, Commissioner. A couple more questions through the chair.
Floor's yours, Member for Johnston.
In the just in relation to, I think you said there's currently 203 women in prison. What's the expected date of women to be accommodated in Alice Springs?
Well, so the women right now are in Alice Springs.
Okay.
So but part of the master plan is that there is going to be a facility which is outside the wire, which is going to be amended and fixed up to house the women, and that's due in Q4 2025.
Outside the wire at Holtz?
No,
do you
in
mean?
Alice Springs.
In Alice Springs, okay.
Yep.
So currently how many women are in Alice Springs and how many women are at Holtz?
We'll just get that for you. So it must be 203 females in custody. So there's 50 in Alice Springs and 153 in Darwin Correction, in Darwin.
And the 15 Alice Springs are in the old purpose-built youth detention centre?
No, they're in behind the wire in the area where, in the main prison.
So when will that?
By the end of the year.
By the end of the year, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Minister, just for public interest, could you explain what you mean by inside and outside the wire?
In the Alice Springs Correctional Centre is the prison where the industries are and where all the prisoners are housed, which is behind the security fence. Outside the wire means outside that where there's some cottages for some low and open people, and also where there's a youth detention centre, which is away, which we plan to bring the women outside so they're not getting catcalled and have to get abused by men who are in the prison, and give them an opportunity to be free and away from that catcalling that happens.
Is that same intention for Holtz?
Yes, it is. They're part of the master plan is at the moment the women are in behind the wire, but for Holtz the plan is the open rating prisoners are at the front, which is Sector 11 when you first drive in, which is outside the wire, and that's going to be converted into a dedicated women's prison.
And what will?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. So what will the capacity of both of those prisons be?
So in Alice Springs, 116, and in Holtz, 88.
Thank you.
Member for Daly.
Thank you, and through the chair.
With a new prison being built at the very end of the master plan for women, which will be in the Holtz area and precinct.
When you say at the very end, that's the final part of the master plan, is that what you mean?
2028.
Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair. Minister, you just mentioned in your answer before that some of the women that are held in this facility have been catcalled and abused. Have you got any data on that?
No.
Thank you. Is there a mechanism for those women to be able to report around the catcalling and the abuse that you just suggest that you talked about?
Yes, there
before?
is, and you might have missed. We just had a big discussion on complaints, and we could go through it again, but it will take. There's been a whole line of questioning on complaints and how people make complaints, and I'm happy to answer again, but there's
don't need if it's already been answered.
Yeah, there's been a lot of answers, and I think Member for Johnston was happy with their answers in relation to complaints. There's been a lot of work done in relation to that.
Yeah, we had the answers. I know Member for Cromer does have questions. Member for Daly, the floor is yours. Do you have any follow-on questions? If not, I will go to Member for Cromer.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, the Leader of the Opposition has often stated that one of their roles is to hold this government to account, particularly on their election commitments. And Minister, you'd be aware that we made a number of commitments in this plan, the CLP plan right here in front of me.
I will ask we don't use props, thank you.
Well, I'm just referring, and within that, there is a crime and corrections plan which goes directly to this agency. There's a couple of components there, and I really want you to update us on where we've got to in terms of progress of those commitments, whether they're funded now or whether they're going to be funded in the coming budget or a future budget and so on. We talked about stronger bail and better police powers. The Chief Minister's already handled those. I've got about 3 areas I want to touch on, so I'll just do them one at a time if I can, so we don't... Very clear one was new prisons, which you've touched on a bit. It says in the plan, with a focus on rehabilitation and skills training. We said, we will build 2 new women's prisons in Alice Springs and Darwin, 2 new adult prisoner worker camps, and a new work in the community home detention program. Sentence to a job will mean offenders serving time will go to work and come out with a job to go. How have we progressed on that particular commitment, Minister, please?
So look, we are progressing with, let's start with the work camp in Katherine. We are planning on having a work camp in Katherine for 200 open and low rated prisoners, and that work has been is well underway. We're securing a location right now, and we're just trying to secure whether it's going to be around where the CDU is north of Katherine.
Apologies, Minister, if you could turn your mic on, please.
Sorry. So effectively, the work camp is looking at a location, whether it's CDU land, which is our preferred option, but again, we're in negotiations with the CDU about that land. So we're trying to, which will enable our sentence to a skill program, because they're going to go hand in hand, because the CDU offer a whole range of training programs, and at the CDU site, which I've been to, there's some cows, there's some agriculture, there's a whole range of sentence to a skill and sentence to a job programs which are available. And for us, it makes sense. Again, I'm not preempting the outcome of the negotiations, but we would prefer to be able to have a work camp there. If that doesn't successful and we go to somewhere else, say the Katherine Research Farm, again, there's cows, there's agriculture, there's a whole range of facilities there which will be able to work hand in hand with our sentence to a skill and programs in relation to moving forward. And the second plan was about the women in Alice Springs, is that right? So the plan details that the old youth detention centre, which is outside the wire, still in the Alice Springs correctional area, has been going to be modified to have the women moving in there, again, to get them out behind the wire so they've got their own separate prison. And that's the same plan up here in Darwin. The Sector 11 area is when you first drive into Darwin. Holtz is on the left. At the moment now, that's an open rated prisoners, and we'll upgrade the security and move the ladies into that, which will open up more space behind the wire. Again, this is all about building capacity for prisoners, whether you be in Alice Springs or in Darwin. So hopefully that answers your question. Yep. We're moving forward with those. And I can give you some good examples out of the Barclay work camp. I was in Tennant Creek last week, and I was speaking to Tennant Mining, who are just opening up a new mine there and repurposing the old Nobles Knob. And they were telling me that they were getting the low and open rated prisoners out of the Barclay work camp to come and help clean up around the mine site. And in fact, 4 of them had moved to employment there. So there's an example of those programs actually working. And the community service work, again, we...
That's also the events.
So what we've been doing is getting the open rated prisoners out to various areas like Henry on Todd in Alice Springs, the Red Centre Nats, the Fred's Pass Show, NAIDOC activities, the Alice Springs Show, Mataranka and Brunette Downs, Gymkhana and Rodeo. So this is getting those supported events as prisoners out into there to do those sentence to skill, and also the community work programs.
Thank you.
And for hours of work in the community work program, so out of the Darwin Correctional Centre, 31,000 hours, the Alice Springs, 15,000 hours, and the Datchler Work Camp, 4,000 hours. So there's a lot of hours of these community work service, which includes people going out, prisoners, to do what I've mentioned, do the mowing and doing those sorts of things around
Minister,
the
I have a follow-up question.
Yep.
Those plans you talked about in Alice and Katherine, do we have a time frame, like a rough time frame of when those will be established and ready to go?
Yes, we do. So the new facilities in Alice Springs is planned for completion in Q4 this year, which is a women's prison. So the women who are currently behind the wire will be moved into that, and then the women will be housed there on a permanent basis. There is another facility for the bail support, which is a paper bark, which is in Alice Springs, where some bail support and a short stay remand centre is going to be built as well. So that's up and running. And the boot camp in Katherine, our plan is to have that running hopefully later this year, but realistically probably early next year. We do have the wet season and dry season to deal with. I think that's about right.
Thank you, Minister.
Member for Kurrama.
Thank you, Minister. You've actually answered a couple of the other components which related to community service and youth boot camps, so thank you for that. I would go to one of the other issues that was mentioned in the commitments, and that is maybe just go a little bit further into the youth boot camps. I'll just read out what we did say. We will start by building 2 youth boot camps in Alice Springs and Darwin, working with Indigenous mentors to provide a safe and structured environment. We will focus on skills training to give kids a future out of crime. Can you give us an idea of the timeframes going forward as to when they may be delivered?
So the youth boot camp?
Youth boot camps, please.
There's I'll pass to Sasha to answer that, because that's very, a lot of work's been done on that in relation to, and there's going to be 7 different areas of work in relation to the personal development of the youth. So I'll let Sasha talk a bit about that.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Member for Kurrama. As part of the commitment in December, the Department of Corrections went out for a expression of interest to organisations to come back to the department with their ideas, their program as such to deliver a youth boot camp. Unfortunately, we were unsuccessful to award. Many of the organisations had excellent ideas and an approach to working with young people. However, the administration requirements to ensure that the safety and any risks were mitigated weren't covered. So in consultation with a number of the applicants, we have worked with them where there will be a co-design for youth boot camps where the Department of Corrections will provide the supervision while young people attend the boot camp, and the organisations will work with the young people through their area of expertise. Yep. So a youth boot camp is a structured and supervised intervention that is locally based with the young person. The youth boot camp will be a ministerially approved program, so a young person can be sentenced by the court. They can also be, it can be included as part of a court order if they are bailed. And we've also included in the new design of the youth diversion program, where if you are a Tier 3 offender, that means high-level offending but not serious offending. If they're a high-level offender, one of the mandatory tasks is to complete a youth boot camp. The process for that is an assessment where, again, it's based on the risk, the identified needs of a young person, also inclusive of those young people who may have a disability rather than being excluded from the program. And based on that assessment, there are 7 categories that we have different organisations able to provide, focused on the enhancement of a young person's wellbeing, understanding that they have accountability for their actions, and also working with their victim to be able to send that message of understanding the hurt, the harm, and work with their local community to pay back. And what that looks like will be part of that conferencing process. We have a number of documents that are very soon ready for release, and we are working towards early July with the first youth boot camp being based in Tennant Creek.
Thank you.
As a follow-up to that.
I've got some information back about the question for Alice Springs and the visits, the audio-visual visits. I'm not sure what question that was, but
question on notice 3.15.
So there's been 24, and 5 of them were cancelled by family. So 19 actual visits occurred. So 24 were organised, 5 got cancelled by family, and so there's actually only been 19, and I don't think any family members have asked for any.
They were from family?
Oh, from family.
Yes.
Thank you.
So 19 occurred, and there were 24 booked, but 5 got cancelled by the family.
Thank you. Just following on from the questions about
I've also got one more question for answer. When we talked about the RAGE program for the sentences under 2 years, 25 have met the new criteria. So that was another question on notice.
It was question on notice 3.14. Thank you, Minister. Member for Johnston.
Thank you. This is a question from the member for Mulca. So thank you for the information about boot camps. Can you explain
Is
why
this a follow-up, sorry, on my question, because I haven't finished?
it's leading on from
Okay,
boot camps?
I've everybody. Member for Johnston had a follow-up question on boot camps. We'll then come back to the member for Karama.
Thank you. Well, it's in relation to the youth diversion grants, which are related to youth boot camps, correct? Can you explain why the grants were for a maximum of $350,000 for organisations that wanted to run these programs properly? How are they expected to employ trauma-informed specialists and operate a program for such a small amount of funding? And people also cited problems around the requirement to operate for 365 days a year. I think I heard you say that you had applications, none of them met the necessary operational criteria. This is from the member for Mooka. These problems and the short application period meant that many organisations and Aboriginal groups did not have time to apply.
So look, the answer is effectively the taxpayer is not funding these businesses from scratch. What we're looking for is businesses that are up and running, have got an operating model, and I'll pass over to Sasha to give you some more detail about that. But this is about getting how many young offenders go on those programs and trying to make sure that we spend taxpayers' money wisely.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Member for Johnston. The youth boot camp process is separate to youth diversion program. The process for the youth diversion program was opened in April and recently closed. We're hoping to award the new proponents to deliver youth diversion programs. The reason that there was a cap of $350,000 is the previous process, the previous community youth diversion, did not have a scientific approach to the way that the money was allocated to different organisations. So some organisations had, for example, $400,000 to deliver community youth diversion and their capacity was 10, where there are other organisations who had 220,000, yet they took 20 young people. So we worked with and through the evaluation that was undertaken by NOUS in 2024 of the Community Youth Diversion Program and built in those recommendations where there was a clear funding model which provided transparency and parity across the organisations based on capacity, the level of difficulty of the young person that they would work with, and also the minimum requirements that they needed to deliver as part of that program. The previous Community Youth Diversion Program had various activities that young people could participate in, but as part of the government's commitment that it would be mandatory tasks, we had a tier 1, so organisations could work with tier 1, and that's very low level offending. To provide a very basic example, it's someone who steals the bike from the backyard. So it's a tier 1, it's immediate, it needs to be done within 1 month. Through to a tier 3 where it is they steal the bike and they also go through the house and they steal belongings and steal the car and then end up crashing the car. So that is up to 6 months and there's far more mandatory tasks that a young person must complete. Hence why there is a different funding model. But we also needed to have a maximum so that we had a fair distribution across the territory so we could deliver local place-based interventions by Aboriginal community-controlled organisations and not-for-profits so that it was a more immediate response rather than waiting for 2 to 3 months for an organisation to take on a referral.
And just one more thing to add to that, just looking at the amounts from the previous providers, there was only one over 415 and all the other ones were under 300,000. So the amount of money is actually higher than the average grant was in previously. So there's actually more money available.
Thank you.
But we're just talking about the average again, going back best bang for buck in relation to how much what do we spend the money on? I do note the time. Are we going to go through the outputs or are we going to just end on the opening statement?
Good going. I think we'll be... Member for Karama's got the last line of questions for opening statement and we'll see how we go.
Okay. Thank you. Minister, you've mentioned, and as you know, being a member of Karama, it's very important to me, the community work program which was operating where prisoners came out, they would go and mow the lawns for elderly, people with disabilities and so on. Wonderful program. Unfortunately, it had to cease, I think, when we introduced because we had a boost in prisoners' numbers and we needed to get more prison staff back into the prisons to control those. I understand it has started coming back. Could I get an update on where that's at and what's the future for that program, please?
Yeah, look, thank you for the question, because I think that relates to a lot of people right across the Northern Territory. And the good news is that it has started back, and we are focusing one of our priorities on that. And like I said earlier, there was 31,000 hours out of the Darwin Correctional Centre. And to give you an update, I might pass to the Commissioner to give you a bit more detail, but the program has come back online, and we've spoken about it many times because many people relied upon that program, and it was a good community benefit. And it's about making sure some of these prisoners give back to the community.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Member for Karama. I know that program is highly thought of by many community members, and many people ask me questions about it. We did suspend and have partially suspended the community service work program to prioritise the operational security and functioning of the prisons. We noticed, obviously, the impact that would have, and we made that decision very carefully. The good news is two things have happened over the intervening time. One is we had some of our officers who work in those community service work parties working in the prison during the week, but then offering to do some overtime on weekends, and that's how we were able to get some more lawns mowed in the northern suburbs and other areas. That's continuing. But since, again, that time, and we've seen some of the recruit courses graduate in recent weeks, we've been able to partially staff back into those community service work programs. So I think today, even in Darwin, I was just looking a moment ago, I had 3 or 4 officers assigned to CSWP today in Darwin, and I think 2 or 3 in Alice Springs. So it's certainly a priority for us. It's one that we will continue to build back because we know how important it is to the community.
And also in the youth justice space, that work programs are happening for the youth justice as well. In the reporting period, over 600 hours of community service was done by the youth out in the community. A lot of that was done in the northern half at Windows of Wetlands. So not only the adults, but the youth justice is both going back in those community programs are up and running.
So, Minister, community work program and where it's at.
Okay, in relation to the current community work programs, those programs were suspended for a period of time ago, but now they're back on track. It was happening for the weekends, but now we've had recruited over 202 staff in this financial year. That has allowed us now to roster back into the program during the week. So that means that those programs will start kicking off more and more as we roll forward, and hopefully more and more people in the Northern Territory can take advantage of those programs.
Minister, we have 4 minutes left. We have a question from the member for Arafura and one from the member of Casuarina. So if we can try get to both in the 4 minutes.
Minister,
Member for Arafura.
can the Minister confirm how many correctional officers have resigned, retired or gone on stress leave since the reporting period?
Yes, I can. There's been 55
That's separations.
separations, so which is 9% or 8.5% attrition rate. And does that answer your question?
Yeah, reporting period. How I'm not.
So from July to
Yes.
31 March.
Thanks.
And if you talk about the youth justice, so there's Alice Springs detention.
Have they had
centre,
exit interviews?
8%. So it's 8% for Alice Springs.
Oh, he's close.
I didn't hear what it was.
No. Member for Arafura. Member for Casuarina.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, a lot of questions we are asking here rely on accurate and up-to-date information. But understand that the department's IT systems are seriously outdated, and that hasn't been fixed for years. Through you, Minister, can the Commissioner explain that challenges staff are facing when it comes to recording and accessing the basic information, like prisoner movements, rehabilitations progress or incidents in custody? And what plans do you have to update this in near future?
I'll pass to the Commissioner to answer that question.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Member for Casuarina. It's one of my pet projects in terms of the digitisation of corrections and the work we're doing in a range of different fronts. We are working on a number of projects to modernise our systems. We function off what's called the Integrated Offender Management System, IOMS. That's our basic case management system for prisoner management and community corrections case management. Slightly different. The youth justice facilities have a different system, which I can talk about separately. We can and are continuing to work with the Department of Corporate and Digital Development to build on additional functionality to that system for better system data recording of incidents, use of force reports, prisoner management. That's the boring stuff. Behind the scenes, though, we are working on a couple of other exciting projects. One is a digital tablet solution for visits into correctional centres, so being able to provide our officers with a secure, robust tablet that prisoners could use to video conference to people outside the system. That's a project underway at the moment. The other one we're working on at the moment is a digital census system, and we're looking to pilot this soon to remove or reduce the reliance on the manual counting of prisoners each day. So every day we conduct census of prisoners twice a day. That can take a long time as we manually count 2,800 people, and in sometimes we can have errors in the count, which we start again. So we're working on a digital solution that links to a prisoner's ID card and would enable our officers to more quickly solve that problem. There are a series of other projects we're working on, but my team has established and will be continuing to roll out a digital governance committee and a digital strategy for corrections, and there's a whole series of projects. One of the things that I'm particularly focused on is reducing paperwork. Our officers in the blocks every day are still using hundreds of different types of paper forms. We did a bit of a stock take on this earlier in the year, and at Darwin Correctional Centre alone, I think we ended up counting over 600 individual forms, many of which we believe can be archived and removed or digitised, and I even found some that had carbon paper in them. So there's a piece of work for us to do in modernising those systems, and that would be about improving the productivity of our staff's day.
Member for Gouger, would you like to utilise the last minute? Member for Johnston. Yeah.
It's a Union question. Who hasn't been in the room? Oh, is that all right? Sorry, this is a question from the member for Mulka. How many... are there any mattresses currently on the floor at any of the detention centres? Have there been times when mattresses are not available for any prisoners, including at Berrima?
Detention?
Sorry, correctional facilities.
So were you talking about the adults?
I'm talking about the adults,
So
yeah.
we're talking about the adults.
I've seen there's lots of mattresses at the...
Let the Commissioner do that.
Yes, there are mattresses on the floor, member for Johnston, most notably watch houses, of course, and also our reception facilities in the prisons. So at Darwin Correctional Centre, we have overnighters and people staying in reception until we can place them into the main prison. Those cells are not equipped with bunks. They're equipped with concrete plinths or similar to a watch house setup, and so there are mattresses on the floor there. To the best of my understanding, through the rest of the main prison, we have fixed all of the mattresses on the floor and moved them into bunks. I've not heard the question about no mattresses being available at Berrima before, so to the best of my knowledge, the answer is no.
Right, so apology, that does conclude time. We've actually gone over, thank you. That concludes the consideration of all outputs relating to the Department of Corrections. On the behalf of the committee, I'd like to thank the Minister for appearing today and the officers who provided advice to the Minister. As I did yesterday, and I'll make it a thing, in 338 minutes of questioning, government members used 29 minutes today, which was 8.5%, which I'm happy with. And The committee will now take a short break and resume at 4 p.m. with questions of the Minister for People, Sport and Culture. Minister, do you have any final comment?
I'd like to say thank you to all the staff who helped me today. Thank you to the staff, my staff on the 5th floor. Everyone has done a power of work. Thank you for the committee. And also thank you for the staff who aren't here, this behind-the-scenes staff, who are keeping the territory safe, keeping officers safe, and the prison officers and all the staff of corrections who, behind the scenes, do a powerful job. And I really thank you and appreciate your work.
We'll now break till 4 p.m.